In any case, this is lecture 10, which involves a little bit of measuring GDP and how in the world we can grow and continue becoming more productive. So we got to think, how does an economy grow, right? Because an economy is really just, people trading with each other, right? So how do we make it so that economy is bigger? Well, they need to trade more. So how do you trade more? Well, you need more stuff. So how do you get more stuff? Well, you make more stuff, right? So the question then is, what kind of stuff, right? So when it comes down to that, it's really about you making stuff that is going to lead then to more production, right? And you may think, okay, so what about, video games? Here you are streaming on Twitch, Mr. Weaver. Doesn't make sense that you say we should only make productive stuff, but, there's an argument for play, right? There's studies that show that, if we did nothing but work all the time, we wouldn't be productive, right? We need an outlet to recharge, not just that, but also express ourselves in ways that isn't just what we generally think is productivity, right? So even play can be productive, right? That's why, I think I've even heard some studies of companies will have a designated nap time, because when, by giving up, 15 minutes for people to have a power nap, they end up coming back refreshed and get more work done than if they did not have the power nap. So pretty interesting. Anyways, let's continue on. So when we talk about producing more stuff, what we're really talking about is producing a specific type of factor of production. Okay, so factors of production, these are the resources that you need in order to make something. Okay. Oh man, is it George Carlin? Not George Carlin. Dan Carlin? Which Carlin is this? There's Dan Carlin that does like hardcore history. And then there's George Carlin, who does comedy and who's dead. Yes, it is George Carlin. I don't know why I had such a struggle thinking of that. I think it's Dan Carlin does hardcore history. Good podcast. I'd listen to it. In any case, what we need to grow an economy are the factors of production. So the first of the factors of production are land. And this is just natural resources, right? So it's really funny. Most of the time when we think about natural resources, we just think about things that come out of the earth, right? So, trees are an obvious example. You have minerals, right? You have water. Not often do we actually think about things that we grow that come out of the land, right? Like any crops that we plant, that's still a natural resource, right? Fish are a natural resource, right? Those ones we often forget about. But they're natural resources, right? So if we get any of these things, that's going to help us produce more. But of course, we can't just have land. We also need labor, because on its own, you can have all the trees in the world, but if you don't have anyone to go out there and get it, it's not going to do you anything, right? It's not going to make you more productive. If having trees is all you need to be more productive, then by the time that we moved across the land bridge, the Native Americans would have come over and they would have seen just a magnificent society, right? So you also need labor, pretty important, and there's a special part to labor that we're going to cover here in a second that is also important. But you'll notice this person here, they also have something in their hands, right? And labor, in order for it to become even more productive, it's not just them doing work, but it's also them using capital. And capital are man-made resources that we have that enable us to do more with our labor, right? But you got to think, especially in today's economy, are the things that we use to become more productive only man-made resources, right? Is it just software on a computer or a bulldozer that we use in order to make ourselves more productive? Well, there's also things, guys, up here that make us more productive, right? So a lot of the times we designate capital into two kind of categories. We have what we call physical capital. That's our what I have pictured here. But there's also what we call human capital. Yeah, this is capital that is owned in the minds of the people that are doing the labor. And when they, accumulate this human capital, their labor becomes much more productive and much more specialized, meaning that they can be more productive than somebody else who doesn't have those, maybe it's an education, maybe it's experience, maybe it's, having a certain skill that no one else or very few others have, and it makes them more productive, right? They can do more with their labor than others can. So we have land, labor, and capital, okay? So if we want to grow the economy, then we need to increase our productive resources, right? We need more land, we need more labor, we need more capital, Okay, so labor then, what does that mean? Well, that means we need more people, right? So there's two ways to get people. Two ways. You can get babies. You can have people immigrate, right? In either case, they're going to be bringing over their ideas, their ability to work, right? One of my favorite economists, his name is Bob Murphy. He has a quote. I'm going to butcher it, but he says something to the effect of, whenever you're making an argument, whether you're for or against it, whether if you're making an argument against immigration, make sure you're not also making an argument against having babies. Okay, because a lot of the times people will point towards immigration and say, oh, they're going to be a drain on resources, but also having a child would be, right? As Americans have more children, this is more people coming in that don't have skills, right? so they come in and they have to get educated. So be careful that if you're going to argue against immigration, you don't also argue against people having kids. Because then, that political party that is against immigration would have a little bit of introspective searching to do. In any case, welcome, Bill. I'll also say that, people, they're probably the most productive thing that we can get, right? If you look at, people throughout history that have thought, oh my goodness, like population's growing and growing, eventually this is going to explode and we're going to have some egg on our face and then it's going to be horrible, we're just going to outpace the amount of people that can actually survive on the planet. Thomas Malthus had this idea, when he was alive in, oh man, what was he, 1800s? Oh, now I gotta look. Actually, he may have been 1766 through 1834. We'll say 1800s. I'll say I was right the first time. I didn't say 1600s. But he thought that we were going to outpace our ability to make sure people were, able to be fed. And what he didn't see was that as we got more people, we would figure out new ideas because we had more people in order to keep everyone fed, right? And then there was another book, I think there was an environmentalist book in the late 1900s, probably the 70s. That's when we did really, a lot of environmentalist stuff. It was the population bomb, where they thought that we were going to outscale the ability for us to support ourselves as we grew in a higher and higher population. But again, we human beings, we possess the greatest asset ever, and that's human capital. That as we grow in population, we also grow in the amount of human capital that we have, that we can then use to solve our problems. So, do I have time for 5-minute university? I don't want to. So here's the deal. There's no way this is going to be copy-striked or copyrighted.
I find the education,
this is very good.
It don't matter where you go to school. Italy, America,
right?
Brazil, it's all the same. It's all just memorization. And it don't matter how long you can remember anything, just so you can parrot it back for the test. And I got this idea for a school I would like to start. Something called the 5-minute university. And the idea is that in 5 minutes, you learn what the average college graduate remembers 5 years after he or she's out of school.
So this is very important, right? I mean, this has the same effect as college, right? More or less.
With the cost of like $20. That might seem like a lot of money, $20 just for 5 minutes. But that's for like a tuition, cap and gown rental, graduation picture, snacks, everything included. Like in college, you have to take a foreign language. Well, at the 5-minute university, you can have your choice. Any language you want, you can take it. Say if you want to take Spanish, what I teach you is, ¿Cómo está usted? That means, how are you? And the answer is, muy bien.
That's more than I remember.
Very well. And believe me, if you took 2 years of college Spanish, 5 years after you're out of school, ¿Cómo está usted? Muy bien. About all you're going to remember.
To be fair, though, I never took any college foreign language, okay? So I remember all this from high school, okay? So I'm just going to...
So in my school, that's all you learn. You see, you don't have to waste your time with the conjugations, vocabulary, all that junk. You just forget it anyway. Now, what's the difference? Economics, supply and demand.
We just learned that. There it is.
That's it. Business is you buy something and you sell it for more.
That's what I learned when I got my
Theology,
MBA.
I'm going to have a theology department. You know, since I'm a priest, it's only right. And what you have to learn in theology is the answer to the question, where is God? And the answer is, God is everywhere.
Checks
Why?
out. I went to a Bible college.
Because he likes you. That's kind of a combination of the Disney and Roman Catholic philosophies. It's just a perfect for the late 70s or early 80s, you know? Just a perfect. Well, after the courses are all over, then it's a time for a little Easter vacation. No time to go to Fort Lauderdale. Only lasts like 20 seconds. But what I do for you, I like to turn on a sun lamp. You know, I give you a little glass of orange juice. That's the snack part, orange juice. And then after vacation, you know, after you swallow it real quick, then it's a time for the final exams. I say to you, ¿Cómo está usted? You say, muy bien. Where is God? The God is everywhere. Economics is supply and demand. Then I put on your cap and a gown. I get out to my Polaroid camera, you know, make a little snap a flash a picture for you. I give you the picture. You give me $20. I give you a diploma, and you're a college graduate, ready to go. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure, right next door to the 5-Minute University, I might have opened up a little law school. You know, you got another minute?
So, I mean, let's think about that. What if we could? What if we could have a 5-minute university where you could genuinely learn everything that you would learn from college, whatever degree you're at, in 5 minutes? I mean, some of you may be thinking, oh, but what about the teachers? What about the professors? Weaver, you know, they would be worse off. And that's true. That's true. I mean, shoot, they wouldn't have a job anymore, right? Or at least maybe one of them would have a job, or maybe one from each department. But in any case, all of them would be without work, okay? But think about everyone overall. Whew, right? Can you imagine? Everyone being able to get the ability to learn what people take 4 years to learn in 5 minutes, right? Society would be much better off. We would be much more productive. Remember, from our last lecture, guys, it's not just about jobs, right? It's jobs that are productive. So in this case, this would make us way more productive. And then the professor, the university jobs, those wouldn't be productive anymore, okay? So overall, yeah, we'd be better. People like me that are, you know, as a teacher, you know, if you could, if you can learn, if you can learn everything from, you know, a 4-year degree in 5 minutes, then shoot, imagine I only teach a senior level class at a high school. That's like what, a minute? I'm like, man, 5 minutes at most, right? So I mean, I'd be out of work too. But overall, society, we'd be much more productive, right? Everyone would have so much more human capital. We'd be way more productive, okay? And do we want to talk about why learning is important? Why human capital is so important? This is pretty quick. We'll go ahead and watch this.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
So, you know, having human capital is important because, it allows you to do very specialized things. A lot of jobs require some specialized knowledge. And in this case, this individual did not have specialized knowledge for his. Matter of fact, more education is not just better for society as a whole, right? It's also better for you, right? If you look at these tables here, or this graph, I suppose, if you look at someone who has less than a high school diploma and their unemployment rate, you can see that over time, they have always had a higher average unemployment rate. If you look at the end of, or the beginning of, rather, well, yeah, I would say the beginning of 2015, you can see that they had a unemployment rate of about 9, right? You can see that someone who has a high school graduate, they're relatively the same, and this is very important. This is relatively the same as someone that has some college or an associate. So you got to think, if you're going to college, you darn well better make sure that you're actually going to finish your degree. And I don't want people to go to college that don't necessarily want to, right? Because if you're feeling pressured into college and you feel like it's not a good choice for you, then don't, right? College is an investment. The only reason you should go is because you want to go and learn to perform a job or perform in a career where you can earn more than you otherwise would and be able to pay back the debt that we would incur. So you can see here, going to college doesn't really make you any better off from an unemployment perspective. I mean, you're still just as employable as someone with a high school degree. Okay, so in this case, it'd probably be better for you to if you're not too sure about college, I would say it's probably better for you to not go to college and instead look into a trade, or look into college, see whether or not you're a person that can finish. Because when you look at those studies of, and this is really important, when you look at those studies of people that, they say that a person that goes to college earns more, really what you're looking for is, are you like the person that goes to college, or are you like the person that doesn't go to college, right? This is something that Russ Roberts said in one of his most recent talks on FTE. I don't know if he has multiple, but he had a talk recently within the last few months where on FTE he said, it's not about whether or not you go to college, it's whether or not you're like the person that goes to college, right? The person that goes to college and finishes and makes more money because of it, they have certain attitudes, right? They get their work done on time, they show up. Are you more like that person, or are you like the person who stereotypically doesn't go to college, right? The person that doesn't put in a lot of effort, the person that doesn't do things the way they're told to, the person that isn't very respectful. If you're, that's a better indicator of, your salary you make than not. Anyways, spend too much time on the slide. In any case, you can see that education matters, right? So at the very least, you are leagues better off by finishing your high school degree. And finishing your high school degree, folks, is almost as good as having some college, right? So very important that you get your degree. Anyways, if you want to grow the economy, again, we can get more people, right? Through, labor, right? So that more people is more labor, yeah? We can also make that labor better by getting better education, okay? We can also acquire more capital, yeah? Because in the same way that education makes the labor better, so too does the capital make the labor better, right? And then, of course, we can always get more natural resources, because if we have more natural resources, then we have more ability to make more capital. We have more ability to give the labor something to work with, right? So, what if, instead of focusing on getting capital, instead of focusing on educating people, instead of focusing on getting natural resources, what if we instead looked at what we already have, right? That's what technology is, folks. Technology is the ability for labor to better use the capital and natural resources that it has in order to produce more, right? So not taking any more to produce more, but looking at what you have and producing more with it, right? So technology is improved when we can use the same amount of resources to get more output, okay? So if we have better technology, we are able to, squeeze that lemon for a lot more than we previously were able to, okay? And the cool thing is that technology can be techniques, right? One person that we know for technological innovation, really, he didn't invent the car, even though he's oftentimes falsely credited with it, right? Ford did not create the vehicle, right? He did not create the horseless carriage. He didn't create the car by any stretch of the means. What he did, though, was something ingenious, right? He said, okay, what if instead I have this assembly line, right? And on this assembly line, I'll have one person doing each thing, putting these interchangeable parts together, right? So The technology in that case was a technique, right? And that enabled us to explode our productive output that we had in the United States, okay? So growth can come from not just getting more natural, not from just getting more factors of production, but also from getting better technology. And that's why over the last 20 years, we've seen an extremely enormous amount of growth. Not because, we've had we've conquered a new planet and we have more resources, but we've learned how to develop this technology where we can better manage ourselves, where we can better manage those that work for us and with us, and be able to produce more, okay? And better, a big thing as well in the past 20 years has just been able to harness all the information that's around us, right? Through being able to gather data and have computers process it. That's been huge. Here's a really cool thing, okay? Really cool table. If we look at this here, look at the retail price of an item in 1973, and then also look at the average wage in 1973 of $4.12, right? So essentially what this is saying is that a washing machine in 1973 cost $285. So if you worked 69.2 hours at $4.12, you would have your washing machine bought. Shoo! Okay, fast forward 2009. The average household income is $18.72. The washing machine now costs $400. Inflation. You got to increase the price by something. Okay. Though if we were to then look at how many hours it takes for a person at $18.72 to work in order to get up to $400, you'll notice that it only takes 21 hours instead. Right. It takes that person under a third of the time in order to get the appliance that they did before. And of course, we can add all that up and we can look at the bottom, guys, and we can see that on average, people have to work 70% less to get these items that existed in 1973. And here's another crazy thing, guys. In 2009, we had these things called cell phones. Not quite a thing to the extent that they are today in 1973, right? And of course, we can compare 2009 to today. Man, imagine all the stuff that exists today that didn't exist in 2009, right? The graphics that we have in the video games, right? All sorts of technologies, right? Look, I know pressure cookers existed in 2009, but an Instant Pot though, they made it so easy that a brain dead person, when it comes to cooking like me, could use a pressure cooker. Anyways, this just shows how much more productive we've become in over that span of 40 or so years, right? So, if we want to grow the economy, what does that result in? Well, it means more wealth. It also means less poverty. Okay, a lot of the times people like to look at the wealthy people getting wealthier, and it's true that there's been an increase in the divide, in the distance that there is between those that are in poverty and those that are wealthy. But what we've also seen over that same period of time, sure, the wealthy are getting wealthier, or the wealthy are getting wealthier, the wealthy are getting wealthier, but those that are in poverty are also becoming wealthy. The people in poverty are becoming well off, right? When we compare those that were kings and queens of the medieval era, right? or if we compare those that were kings and queens just before the industrial boom, in the 1800s, and we compared them to people that were impoverished today, people that are impoverished today have a lot more than they do, right? So because we continuously become more productive, those that before who were at the bottom, rungs of the socioeconomic ladder would have had, very little. Whereas today, yeah, it sucks, relatively to those that are well off. Yeah, they don't have a lot, but they're becoming better and better and better off because we're becoming more and more productive, right? And those that are, not in poverty, but they're in a they have low incomes, they're much better off than someone, 50 years in the same socioeconomic class as them, okay? So we need then something to measure economic growth, and one thing that we can use to measure economic growth is three little letters, GDP. So what is GDP? Well, it's gross, it's domestic, and it's product. So what do these words mean? Well, gross means total, domestic means here at home, product means stuff that's made. So it's the total amount of stuff that we make here at home. Okay, so we also measure it in dollars, right? Because we got to have a unit for it, right? So it's the total dollar value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given year. This is essentially saying how much within a border are the people within that border making in terms of U.S. dollars, right? Of course, we look at it as U.S. dollars. I'm assuming other countries, when they calculate GDP, they're going to calculate it in whatever, denomination is, not denomination, whatever currency is familiar to them, right? Because even when we Americans are comparing GDP between countries, we'll convert the other country's GDP into dollars, right? That's what we'll look at GDPs in. So how is GDP calculated? Well, again, it's the total amount of all the stuff that we make within a country, but there's different things or different areas in which we produce things, right? So one thing is consumption, right? These are things that you and I consume on a daily basis. Yeah. There's investment spending, right? Stuff that we're investing so that we can produce more stuff later. There's government spending, right? When the government produces stuff. And then there's what we call net exports. And net exports is actually us taking our exports, right? What we send away, okay? And then we are subtracting our imports, okay? Now, you'll notice there, imports is the one being subtracted. We don't want to include imports for a very special reason, and that's because did we make them within this country? No. Okay. The exports, now we don't consume them here, but were they made here? Yeah. So, consumption. This is what households spend on goods and services. Okay, so you go to McDonald's, buy some food, boom, consumption. Buy a toy, consumption. Buy a video game, consumption. I feel like it's that Kendrick Lamar song. Sit up, consumption. No, we're done. So then investment then, imagine this is firms buying the things that firms buy, buying the factors of production, right? These are purchases of capital equipment and structures, right? So if you're buying something in order to produce more, right? If you're a company that's in this case buying a server, you're buying that because you're going to be able to produce more, right? If you're buying a truck, very specifically, if you're buying a new truck, it gets included. We'll talk later. If this company was trying to save money and they bought a used truck, that would not count towards GDP, okay? But investment includes anything that companies use in order, that companies buy in order to increase their production later, right? So like a building or a machine inside of a factory or a desk for an office. Okay. And then we have government purchases. This is the G, and these include spending on all goods and services by local, state, and federal governments. Okay. So this is the government spending money on federal salaries. This is the government sending money to people to build these, jets, tanks, rifles, ammunition, all sorts of stuff, right? Of course, you can't forget roads. You can't forget I'm just spitballing here. Any sort of government service, like I don't know, anything that's on the federal budget, right? So you got the FBI, you got any sort of other agency, you have the Coast Guard. In any case, again, here we have exports. I already talked about this, but exports, again, net exports is exports minus the imports, okay? So the reason we do that is because imports, while we consume them here, we don't make them here, right? So we don't want to include those, and we want to make sure that we include the exports, right? So we take our exports, we subtract the imports, that's our next export, that's our net exports, okay? And if we have more exports than we do imports, we call this a surplus, right? And if we have more imports than we do in exports, we call this a deficit. And of course, if they're equal, we call this a trade balance, right? Now, someone may look at this and say, okay, well, which one's better? And, really, I mean, it comes down to individuals, right? Because we like to look at this and be like, oh, America trades with China, and now America has a trade deficit. Well, really, what's happening? It's people, individuals in countries trading with people and individuals in another country, right? So at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter unless you're trying to push an agenda, right? If you're trying to push the agenda that America should be making more stuff here and, being able to send it overseas, we'll talk about why that's, a dishonest agenda once we get to the whole idea of public choice theory and how that benefits a select few people but really hurts the rest of the people in the country. That's really the only reason that you could say a trade deficit is a bad thing. And we'll talk about why that's not necessarily intellectually honest to say. Okay. So, if we were to look at 2017's GDP, this was the breakup here in the States, right? So we can see that we still have a lot of our GDP being allocated towards consumption, right? Stuff that we're spending money on that's being consumed. Same thing for investment, I guess. Not same thing, but the next highest is government spending. We have just under 20% of the United States GDP. The 20% of the stuff that we produce is being produced by the government. Or I guess I'm reluctant to say that the government's producing it, but the government is taking 20% of the GDP in order to finance all the stuff that the government spends money on. And then there's about, again, just about under 20, okay, that's similar to that of government spending, being used for investment spending, where we are having firms tuck money away into productive assets that are helping them produce more in the future. And then we had a trade deficit, where we had negative 2.9% in 2017. I really should update this slide. Maybe I can do that for next semester. Sorry for those of you that are taking the class now and those of you that are here watching the live stream now. In any case, in 2017, our GDP was 19, 1, 2, 3, that's million, 4, that's billion, 5 trillion. Holy moly. 19.4 trillion. But guys, this is in 2017. It's been a minute, right? Let's go to national debt clock here and look at the current estimate. It's very important that when we look at GDP, we realize that there are reporting delays. It takes a very long time to calculate GDP, okay? So about every 3 months, they estimate. I mean, you gotta imagine, shoot, GDP, we're literally looking at everything that's been produced in the country. What? I mean, that's hard, right? So it's estimated about every 3 months, and then about every 6 months, accurate information comes in. But if we go to the national debt clock here, don't pay attention to the U.S. national debt. I sound like a politician. That's not what we're looking at right now. What we're looking for, they moved it. I have to find it. I'm looking for U.S. GDP. There it is. It's in the middle now. Okay. Look at this number in the middle here. Let me see if I can zoom in. This is the current number. 19 trillion. Hold on. What's our current GDP? 19.3 trillion. This is 19.5. So this is actually very interesting because over the last, 3 years? Almost 3 years. We've grown by just under, I'd say about $150 trillion. Not trillion, oh my goodness. About $150 billion in GDP. But if we look at how much the U.S. national debt has grown, I want to say when Trump got into office, it was 21 trillion. So the debt has grown by a whole lot. The GDP has not grown by a whole lot. So we'll talk about the significance of this number / the insignificance of this number. And then we'll also talk about how this number down here should scare you, a young person, to, well, hopefully not to death. That wouldn't be too good. Anyways, what this number shows, guys, is that the U.S. produces $19 trillion worth of stuff. Whoa. Do you guys know how much a trillion is? Like, okay. I saw, where's that clip of Reckful? Is that school appropriate? I feel like it is. Reckful explains a billion. I hope.
Dude, I tripped everyone out
appropriate.
today. And I'm gonna do it one more time because you didn't see it, Conrad. Ready? I'm ready. Okay, watch this. Conrad, everyone knows this, and you know it too, but when you see it, it's different. Ready?
I like your ponytail.
Here is 100.
I'm gonna apologize if he. This is a really good example. If he swears or says something inappropriate, I apologize.
$1,000, Conrad. Here, there it is. That's a lot of money. That's what we can hope at best to make in a year. You know, doing really fucking well after taxes. That'd be crazy to make in a year, right?
Sorry.
Right.
That's a lot of money. All right. Now we have someone named Amhai who is top Twitch donator of all time. He has like probably $1 billion, right?
Right.
There are people in the world with $1 billion, regardless. Okay. Anyways, $1 billion, that's a big fucking number. We can see that there's a lot of zeros
watch your
on
mouth.
top of the 100,000, but we don't really feel it. You don't really feel it until you go like this. You know it's 10,000 times more, but here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 500,000. Copy paste that. That's $1 million. Okay.
$1 million. We
We
did
have to
it.
go 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 million. Let's copy paste that. That's 10 million, okay? Let's copy paste the 10 million. That's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, $100 million, okay? Let's copy paste the 100 million. Okay, that's 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, $1 billion, okay? And now I'm Amhai, and I'm going to donate Soda Pop in $100,000 like this.
If you scroll through this, you wouldn't even be able to see it. I think he does that later on in the video, but you can just get an idea of how big $1 billion is. Now let me do this for you guys. How many billions are in a trillion? Imagine him copying and pasting that over and over again. That's insane. 1 million billions. Phew. So you start to get an idea of just how productive the U.S. economy is. You also start to get a good idea of how in the world this is happening, right? This is essentially how much money we have, not just we're in debt, but how much money we've promised to people. Thank you, Reckful. My goodness. Absolutely insane. So, let's keep talking about GDP. What's not counted here? One thing we got to make sure that we're including here is that we don't want to double count everything, right? Because think about it. Cars have tires on them, right? So, if one person is selling the tires, new tires, to go be put on a car, and then that car is sold to somebody new, how many times have those tires been counted? Well, you know, at least twice, right? You know, maybe you could say, oh, well, the rubber on the tires was actually counted 3 times when they made the tire and sold it to the person that puts the tire on the wheel, and those were sold to the person that makes the car. I don't know. Maybe that's not how cars are made. I know nothing about my car. I rely too much on specialization. Okay. Another thing we don't want to count are secondhand sales items. I have Y up here, but that's for the same reason, right? You know, let's say what's a game that came out recently? I don't know. Why am I blanking on a game that came out recently? Recent game releases. Sure. So, I buy Madden NFL 21, right? Buy Madden 21. I'm like, dude, this is a great game. And I keep playing it and keep playing it. I'm like, wait a minute. This is just like the last game. Except it's not. It's like the same, but different. Man, I really wish I had 40, you know, I really wish I had like $10. Oh, I know. I'll just take it to GameStop and sell it for $10. Get $10. Boom. And then I go and play Madden 20. And my life is literally the same, except now I have $10. Pretty awesome. But then some Joe Schmo's like, oh man, I really wish I had Madden 20. I don't want to get it, you know, new. I want to get it used. So they go into GameStop, they buy the used copy. If we were to count that used copy towards GDP, we would have counted it 2 times, right? So we do not include used items, okay? Same thing is true, right? You buy a sweater from Old Navy, it's new, and you know you get to smell like a boomer because you're buying clothes from Old Navy, but you don't like it, you know, because boomer. So you sell it to, not sell it, you donate it to Goodwill. Goodwill then sells it to somebody. You know, Karen, she picks it up, she loves it, she smells glorious. And, well, do we count that towards GDP? Well, no, because then it would have been counted twice. Okay. There's a lot of good visualizations as to what $1 billion is on YouTube. Matter of fact, I think there's maybe one in this slideshow. If not, there's one in one of my future lectures, especially once we get to the U.S. debt here in this class. So another thing that we have to make sure is that we're not counting everything outside the borders, right? Because definitionally, GDP is gross domestic, right? Here at home, so within the borders. We don't want to go out of those, okay? So we want to make sure we stay in the country's borders. And here's where things go a little sideways, okay? Because, guys, gross domestic product is all the things that are produced in the country in a given year. Some things are produced in the country each year that aren't counted in GDP, okay? Some things, you see, we are excluding these on purpose. These we're excluding because, well, drug dealers, they don't exactly file anything for us to track what their transactions are. If they did, they probably wouldn't be drug dealers anymore, okay? So, yeah, illegal activities aren't counted, right? Not just drugs, but also other things that people do to produce. You're a teenager, you have an imagination. Okay, so we'll go on here. Another thing that's not counted are non-market activities, right? Here's what's really weird, okay? I want you to go up to a mother that's a stay-at-home mother and be like, what you do is not productive. Don't do that. You'll die, okay? They are doing something that is productive. I just realized I have my gamer ears on. Take those off. What they're doing is productive, right? You can't deny it, right? They're helping somebody grow up who is then going to become another a productive person in society, right? So what they're doing is productive. Absolutely. You cannot deny it, but is it included in GDP? No. The thing is, though, it would be really hard to track, right? Another thing is, imagine this, right? If I go outside right now and I mow my lawn, that doesn't count towards GDP. But if I go and hire somebody to go out and mow my lawn, all of a sudden, it's GDP. Here's the thing. Of course, I suck at mowing my lawn, so really this example starts to fall apart when you see how, what my lawn looks like. But when I pay somebody to mow my lawn, it's counted. When I do it, it's not. It's the same thing, right? It's the same amount of productivity that's going on, yet it's not counted, right? And this reminds me, right? I could also pay the neighbor kid to go mow my lawn. But what does this fall under? This falls under illegal activities. Yeah, little Sally, when she's going out to set up her lemonade stand, when she's, being the kingpin of the, on the corner there. Also an illegal activity, also not counted towards GDP, right? So we got to make sure that we know here that GDP is really not representative of the whole productive picture, right? But there's also some things that GDP just in its nature doesn't take account of, right? I mean, shoot, China's GDP is huge, but you can also look at the smog that hangs over their cities, right? China's GDP is huge, but they also don't have much freedom, right? China's GDP is huge, but would I want to live there? No. Also, there's a reason why their GDP is not too surprising, which we'll take a look at here in a second. But we could have an incredibly high GDP if we just polluted the heck out of our environment, right? Yet then we wouldn't be able to enjoy a healthy environment, right? So we got to just keep in mind that while GDP does show, show the material wealth of a country, it doesn't show the complete picture, okay? It doesn't it doesn't show you what's being made necessarily. It may break it up into consumption. It may break it up into investment and government spending and net exports, but it doesn't, much further than that, it doesn't really break it up. Of course, you could probably find some data online that'll show you, more specific categories. But, GDP could be equally as large if we built a whole bunch of bombs and dropped them on another country as if we just, instead of destroying other people's houses, we built our own, right? And is really, while GDP will count the bombs towards GDP, is that really productive, right? Is us, killing other human beings, is us destroying other people's livelihoods, is that really productive, even though it's being counted towards GDP, right? So you guys should know JFK, right? John F. Kennedy, president, starred in the latest season of The Umbrella Academy, as well as the first one, I think, technically. More of a cameo. Anyways, he had a brother, Bobby Kennedy, RFK, Robert F. Kennedy, and I'm assuming their middle names are different. Anyways, he had a great speech on
we seem to have surrendered personal excellence and community value in the mere accumulation of material things. Our gross national product now is over $800 billion a year. But
gross national... Real quick, sorry, I'm going to back up here. Gross national product is what we used before we used GDP.
It's over $800 billion a year.
Not what we used, it was the name for it.
But that gross national product, if we judge the United States of America by that gross national product counts air pollution and cigarette advertising, and ambulances to clear our highways of carnage. It counts special locks for our doors and the jails for the people who break them. It counts the destruction of the redwoods and the loss of our natural wonder in chaotic sprawl. It counts napalm, and it counts nuclear warheads and armored cars for the police to fight the riots in our cities. It counts Whitman's rifle and Speck's knife, and the television programs which glorify violence in order to sell toys to our children. Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry, or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. And it can tell us everything about America, except why we are proud that we are Americans.
Oh, Bobby boy. But great words that demonstrate that GDP does not quite measure everything. So is it useful? Oh, sure it is, right? If you're measuring the material well-being of an economy, oh, yes, absolutely. But, if you're measuring happiness, quality of life, probably not. Okay? Not a good measure for, how happy people are. Definitely a good measure for the material well-being of people. And another thing I want you guys to think about here is, does material well-being necessarily mean that you're going to be happy? I think that, the amount of people that end up being incredibly wealthy and still unhappy, I mean, that's it kind of puts that question to rest, right? So don't think, if we can look at a country and see that a country has all the material well-being in the world, yet happiness is still not as, up to snuff as we would like it to be. Don't think that in your own life that getting your own material well-being to a certain point will make you happy either. That comes from a different place. So then, what can we use? Is there anything more accurate? Well, there's something that can give you a better picture, and that's GDP per capita. And what we do for that is we take GDP and we divide it by population, okay? But even then, this is an average, and averages can be a little bit misleading, and it doesn't really tell us anything about distribution. So I don't think Bob Saget. Countries by GDP. I want to demonstrate to you here why GDP per capita is at least better than GDP, okay? Because when you look at GDP, you can see, oh yeah, United States, we're number one, America, baby. And then you see China number two, okay, and then Japan, and then it dirtles out. But I also want to point out, dude, look at that, dang. China was expected to overtake us by 2020. I'm curious where they're at. But in any case, look at the difference between China and Japan. What? That's crazy. So, my big point here, U.S. number one, China number two. Let's now look at countries by GDP per capita. There is a CIA. There it is. Yes. Yes? No. Yes, World Factbook. Okay. So, and here we have countries that you haven't even heard of. Let's scroll in here. Liechtenstein, number one, super small country, super rich country. And then some other countries here that you may have heard of. Again, Luxembourg, same thing, smaller country over there. Where is United States? We're going to keep scrolling until we see the United States. I think I passed it already. There it is. I was going to say, I thought it was in the teens. But 60,000. Again, this is an average, right? So the outliers can make it not exactly an accurate picture of what the average person makes. What we would instead want to look at is something called the median household income of the United States, which is closer to, is this even that much off? 61,000, whereas this is 50. Interesting. And of course, this is household, so I'm curious what this would be like for per person. Anyways, we were looking for China. Let's keep looking for China, guys. You know, this is going to take too long. We're just going to search China. Went from number 2 to 108. And you may think, well, why is this? Well, this is per person, right? China's got a lot of people. Yeah, they got a huge, huge GDP, but they also have a huge, huge population. Okay, so... And of course, I always like the Smart Tank quote, right? People will try to use, averages. Be careful, though, because there are lies, darn lies, and statistics. You see, I censor myself. Anyways, something to note, though, especially as we go into... We have a few more lectures in this unit, and then we'll move on to the next unit where we start to look at what government, can do as far as its involvement in the economy. But I want you to look at what this graph represents, okay? This graph is titled Per Capita Income and Economic Freedom. Okay, so economic freedom is how much are people able to decide for themselves what they want to do. Okay, so you have GDP per capita on this side. Okay, and then you have the least free over here and the most free over here. And I mean, this is definitely a trend. You'll notice that the more free a country is, the more productive each person, on average. Remember, averages can be a little bit misleading. But, the difference between these numbers is rather substantial, right? So you'll notice that those in the more free countries tend to be those that are the most productive, okay? And a lot of that has to do with incentives, and a lot of that has to do with things that we're going to be talking about as we continue on throughout the semester. In any case, that's all there is for this lecture. Thank you so much for watching.